You never forget your first time. I mean, I think back on that day and I can feel the rush, of blood to my head and just that level of excitement and, trying to figure out how was I going to ask for it and how was I going to pay for it. I remember the first thing I noticed was this huge rack, right? Oh, so just full of and and my mom was going to help me pay for my first time. So what? Why am I getting bleeped? Why am I bleeping? I'm talking about the first time I bought a comic. What do you think? What do you think I'm talking about? You dirty, nasty people. Nasty. Every time you put your work out in the world, it's the potential to be somebody's first time experiencing work in that genre, in that medium. There's obviously numerous reasons why we want to do our best. But if you think about that first time reader or the first time viewer of your work or the first time listener to your podcast, they're not just meeting you and your style for the first time, they're being introduced to a whole world for the first time. That's kind of an important responsibility. Just think about the worst movie you ever saw. I'm sorry to bring up such a painful memory, but picture it. I know what mine is. I won't say it out loud. Now imagine if that was the very first film you ever saw in your life. Would you want to go back to the movies? Would you want to try out that particular genre of movie ever again? Maybe not. So while I was thinking about my responsibility to the audience that I hope to create and inspire, it made me reminisce and think about those pieces of art that got me inspired and gave me an incredible love of animation or comics or film. And that made me want to do this particular video, one that I've threatened for a long time. Welcome to the first Tales from the Shelf. New Mutants, specifically New Mutants 18. There it is. I was 12 years old when New Mutants 18 came to the comic rack in my town. Written by Chris Claremont and illustrated by Bill Sienkiewicz, this was the comic that got me into comics. And I was certainly aware of comics. I owned a bunch. I had a box that I had gotten from an uncle, and I love those comics. I still own most of them. They are the books that I read 100 times because I didn't have any other ones. Superman, Spider-Man, some war books, a lot of horror books, which really influenced me. And those Spidey books, I can't even tell you how deeply they affected me and my love for Spider-Man. But they weren't comics that I picked. There's a big distinction there. They're important to me. They're meaningful to me. They had an impact on me, but I didn't go pick them. That all changed with New Mutants 18. I remember the day pretty clearly. I was sick. I was 12 years old. My mom took me to the doctor, and it sucked, as it always does when you're little and you're sick. And so on the way home, she offered to get me something to, cheer me up. I think, honestly, she wanted to buy cigarettes. So we went to the cigarette store, which is actually still in my hometown, and they had a comic book rack. Obviously, the first thing you see is the cover, and this cover intrigued me, right? I stare up, and there's Danielle Moonstar staring right back at me, like staring through me. And these teeth, and the snow, and I'd never seen a painted cover. Who the hell painted comics? I didn't know that was a thing. I had to know what was happening in this book. I did not have 60 cents because I was in my pajamas, because I went to the doctor and felt like crap. I asked my mom to buy this book. Then I opened it up. And once I got inside this book, the deal was sealed. That art hit me like a sledgehammer in the face in the best possible way. And I can equate it to other pieces of art that I've seen that had a major impact on me, that changed the course of my thinking. Seeing Sienkiewicz's art just opened parts of my mind that I didn't know existed. Now, if you don't know Bill Sienkiewicz's art, shame on you. The man's drawn for Marvel and DC. He's done all the big characters as well as his own indie work. But the thing that makes Bill so special is that he grew with the art form. There was a lot of experimentation going on in the 80s, but it wasn't always happening in the mainstream books. Here comes Bill and his sharp edges and expressionistic, dreamy storytelling, borderline abstract, followed up with portraits of characters that were so deft and so meaningful, I almost felt like I was looking through a window. He's a genius, a literal genius. Okay, so I did a little bit of YouTube magic. This is not actually from the shelf. This is a beautiful, beautiful treasury edition of the Claremont Sienkiewicz run of New Mutants. The actual item from the shelf is this. And I'm gonna get to why this is so special, but you need to see the treasury first. Okay, so there's this beautiful treasury edition and it comes out, I don't even know about it. Luckily, my partner and bestie, Steve Siegel, knows about it. And Christmas time comes around and my wife contacts Steve and says, Joe never wants anything and I don't know what to get him for Christmas. So what would be a cool gift? And Steve, because he knows me really well, says, get him this treasury edition of New Mutants. He loves Bill Sienkiewicz. This is important to him. Christmas time comes up and right before we're getting ready to open presents, my wife pulls me over, the whole family around, and she says, hey, listen, I got you something and Jack got you something kind of similar. So when you get to his present, just do me a favor and kind of like, play it up a little bit. I open this first, right? I get this massive big boy and I'm like, wow, this is super cool. And it's, it's not cheap. So I don't think that my son got me this book. So my brain is like, I don't get what she's telling me, but okay. So then my son waits and gives me this gift at the very end. And he gives me this individual issue, New Mutants 18. It is signed by the man himself, Bill Sienkiewicz. What my son did was, while he was at New York Comic Con, he found this book at a retailer. He bought it, then he waited online to get Bill to sign it. My son knew, without asking me, without talking to anybody, that this was the book, that this book changed my entire life. So I open this up and I immediately start crying. It's actually hard for me to even tell this story because I get weepy about it. And everybody's staring at me and I'm like, this is the book. This is the book that got me into comics. Like, oh my God, Jack. And I'm just falling all over my son. And my wife looks at me and she goes, well, I guess you didn't have to pretend to like it. She wasn't really upset, but she did not understand the connection and my understanding of the effort that it took Jack to be that thoughtful, to go get the book and to get it signed. So sorry, hon, and thank you again, Jack. That is why this book, there's many reasons why this book has a special place on the shelf, but that really put it over the top. So I owe a debt to the people who made this book that can honestly never be repaid. Writer Chris Claremont, editor Ann Nesenti, and of course the maestro, Bill Sienkiewicz. They were my first comic book. Anything I have, I owe to that moment in time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That's a story of the comic that made me a comics fan. What would happen if you put your work out into the world? Who would you inspire? There's only one way to find out.